So, like, every so often you get these pieces of news, and they're just so cool. You're like, I need to talk about this right away. So, earlier today, like we say earlier, about half an hour ago, Flake loaded up his interview with James White. Go and watch it. That is full of so much great stuff. He didn't pull any punches answering questions. He answered a lot of, we'll call them hard questions. Questions from the audience. I would say quite a few good, like, detailed questions on things, but the spoiler, the tasty piece that you need to watch the interview to understand is that James White gave out the name and the theme of the next Flesh and Blood set, right? Okay, let's break this down between you and whoever else is coming on live with me. I just had to talk about it straight away. I get so excited about these things. But obviously there is a full interview over on Flake's channel. I'll post the link in the chat, which is just full of, full of really great stuff, and I would definitely just go and watch it. But I'm just going to cover this announcement now and kind of what I speculate may be involved and things like that. So, firstly, what did James White actually say? Let's see if we can bring it. Well, I won't bring it up. I'll just paraphrase it for you guys. He basically said that the next set of Flesh and Blood is called Dynasty, and he's really excited because it will continue on the story of the Uprising set in a way they haven't done before. Okay, now that's quite a tasty little spoiler. So we're in Uprising in a very specific situation, right? Where we've got these two heroes that are vying for power. They're actually brother and sister, Dromai and Phi. Though Dromai is clearly, been brought up in a really good environment and, has been taken to the Imperial Court and trained to be an Imperial servant. Meanwhile, Phi is closer to the Volca, the people of the land, the peasants, if you will, the downtrodden. And in this dynamic, we have a brother and sister duo, both of which are theoretically leading their different sections of this the Volca, or the land. So we're obviously gearing up to a showdown, but that showdown hasn't happened yet in the universe, and there's still lots of stories pending on the Flesh and Blood website under each hero. You can go and look them up. There's still, I think, 3 stories pending on each, which is obviously going to tell us more about what's actually happening with these people and what's, sort of happening in the dynamic between them. But we've got this brother and sister duo, which is not at all based on Avatar, but they are definitely fighting for leadership of the Fire Nation, so make of that what you will. And we very much have the setting where Dromai is probably positioned quite well to become a Drakai or become a, one of the leaders of the land. And on the other hand, we have Phi, and we have this little tidbit through, like, flavor text and things like that kind of tells us that, a phoenix always becomes a dragon, that there's kind of this cycle that happens in Volca where the phoenix rises up, overthrows the dragon, and then grows into the dragon themselves. So, kind of a cycle of oppression, rebellion, oppression. And we're in the middle of one of those cycles now. And I find this very, very fascinating because we know that there's currently an uprising. All of the Draconic cards can be played by either Dromai or Phi, which means the uprising itself could almost be of advantage to either one of them, if that makes sense. It gives Dromai a chance to advance that she probably wouldn't have had outside this environment. And it gives Phi a chance to overthrow the current regime. But how does that lead in to the next set, Dynasty? Now, James White said that it continues the story of this set, Flesh and Blood, into a new set, something they haven't done before. And a lot of people remember very fondly, I certainly remember very fondly, the 2 and 3 block sets with story accomplishments from Magic, where you'd get, short stories, you really get involved with the characters, and the plane that they were set on. And that sort of thing might be what LSS is envisioning here. We're going to have a series of stories that bring us from a position of Phi and Dromai opposed at the start of the Uprising, all the way through to one of them being crowned as the leader of the Dynasty. Now, in practice, this tells us 2 things. Now, like everyone else, I've been testing a lot of Uprising on TTS, because we have the cards on TTS now. Want to get a bit of a head start on the RTN meta. And a few people have fed back the same thing. The Draconic heroes don't necessarily feel finished. They feel fun, they feel well designed for limited play, but they can't necessarily compete on the same level as the heroes that currently exist, right? Dromai versus Prism is quite an interesting matchup, but Dromai loses very, very hard to Brutes, much harder than Prism ever did, because Prism has Phantasmal Footsteps, which let them recover from one Herald being popped, whereas if one of your little dragons gets popped, Dromai's entire turn is over, unless you're running the common boots, but then you're paying 1 blue to get your turn back. It's not efficient. You can only do it once per game. So Dromai feels like she's missing a tool in her toolbox, or there's something that isn't quite clicking together. And Fi feels like a good aggro deck, but it's hard to see what Fi brings that Runeblade, like Briar, doesn't do better, right? For example, he doesn't really have anything that strikes me as a specifically interesting ninja tool. He has kind of 2 good cards in Tome of the Firebrand and Phoenix Form, but he doesn't really have that synergy with Draconic as much as people kind of think that he should have. Like, the Draconic cards are fine, but they're not as good as the finishers that he has himself, like Rise Up, Tome of the Firebrand, to just get another 2 attacks off. So there's kind of maybe this missing piece. And we're going into Dynasty, which everyone is speculating is going to be a supplemental set that finally boosts element cards, right? So finally boosts, not element, talent cards like Light and Shadow and all these things. And if that is the case, then we're also going to see more cards for Draconic, more cards for Draconic Ninja, and more cards for Draconic Illusionist. So maybe the actual vision of what Classic constructed Fi, Dromai, Icelander looks like isn't finished. And that's quite an exciting proposition to me, because I've played them in draft a couple of times now. The draft feels quite fun, but in CC they do feel like they're lacking a bit of power versus the older heroes. So maybe we're going to see some sort of element. But let's talk, if those heroes get expanded, that's going to be really interesting. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be kind of exciting. But let's talk for a second about how you handle this kind of thing from a story perspective. And this is one of the things that I'm super excited about, because obviously, as someone who played Legend of the Five Rings, both the TCG and the LCG, player engagement in story is a big thing for me. For people who haven't played a game like that, really what this means is that you as a player, you're already invested in the game. You're already prepared to cosplay. You've already got a favorite hero. You've already bought, let's just show off the, Passing Mirage, and you've already bought all the shiny cards and all the spoilers and everything for your set. You've got a full cold foil set of heroes. But that's still a character who exists and has been created for you in an environment where you are a spectator. You've got to hope that Bravo ends up doing the thing that you feel like Bravo would do. And if they have good story writers, that is what Bravo ends up doing. He ends up doing things that feel Bravo-like. But there is a big difference between Bravo doing something that feels Bravo-like and you as a Bravo fan being rewarded for it. And you as a Bravo fan getting together with the other Bravo fans and coming together and somehow choosing the most Bravo decision out of a group of decisions that you can choose and getting him to do that. That's the point at which you fall in love with the hero, because you are co-creating the narrative alongside the story team. Now, it's very difficult to do because you can't have free choices, but you can't be because people will do stupid stuff. If you don't believe me, Google L5R TCG Panda. They made a panda into a card, and then the card was a panda, and it had cavalry so it could fight the horses. It's a bit crazy, but the point is, if you give open-ended stuff, people will choose a lot of crazy stuff. But if you go with a set number of optional choices, then you have a lot more safety in your narrative, right? Which is quite good. The only problem, of course, is how quickly you have to react then, and how quickly that story comes out. But if you're only doing these short Vignette stories, which is what LSS are doing, you are a lot more flexible in terms of how easy it is to commission a writer to do a specific bit of writing. Especially if... So let's break this down, what I think is going to happen. I think that there's some event or story, maybe it's World Championships, maybe it's something that happens at Worlds, where the players, either through maybe however many people show up playing Fi or Dromai, what the highest place finishes are on day 2 of Fi and Dromai players, or maybe a special side event where you have to play with a preset Fi and Dromai deck and see who wins. But it's some situation at Worlds there will be a way for Fi and Dromai players to put their weight behind who is actually going to be the head of the next dynasty in Flesh and Blood in Volca, right? In the set that comes out, because we know that there's a supplemental set coming out in November, there will be 2 cards that will represent the, Fi or Dromai winning. They're going to be full art, extended, cold foil, Fi or Dromai cards with them on a throne, or them, in ascendancy, basically. And they're both going to be in the set. I don't think they'll have different abilities. They could. I mean, I think Fi's ability is very tame. I could easily see him having a different ability. I think Dromai is pretty well designed, so I don't see her changing. But the point is that one of those will be an official The Winner promo. And the other one will be, sorry it didn't win, but look, it's still pretty, you can still use it, right? And based on that, or they'll do it as an Armory promo like they've done with the new Briars, right? And they'll give it out to everyone. But based on that, we'll be in a situation where one of them has won, and they are the Dynasty. And it's safe to do in this context, because it basically Volca is going to help Solana regardless, right? In my head, I don't see there's any way that we can't have the next set involving... we're going to have Savage Lands and Metrics first, but then we're going to have something that wraps up this Solana versus Demonastry storyline. And I think regardless of whether Dromai or Fi ascends to become the new dynasty in Volca, they will go and help. So it doesn't really matter who actually wins. It's very easy to write a story where Dromai sends troops to help or Fi sends troops to help. As long, if they go themselves, then obviously it becomes a bit trickier. But that story is still about, probably 6 months to a year out at this point. So it's not actually that big of an issue. But either way, one of them will win. They'll both go and help Solana. So it's really safe to do this contained narrative where it doesn't really matter who wins for the overall plot of where the story is going. So you can kind of just let people have a bit of a free reign to decide who's their favorite. And I think based on that, we're probably going to see a bit of player engagement in advancing the story that we saw in Uprising into Dynasty. Because he said, this is James White, of course, that we would be experiencing the story of Flesh and Blood in a way we haven't done before. And I refuse to accept that that's just the articles that come with the set. I think there's going to be some player participation. What does it mean for Classic Constructed and other sorts of things? Don't know yet. I do think if we're getting support for Draconic and Draconic Illusionist and Draconic Ninja so soon after this set came out, then it is very, very likely that the 2 card pools were designed together, which means that if you're getting the feeling and the experience that Fi and Dromai aren't finished yet, the reason for that is because the half of the card pool, Majestics, whatever, have been shifted into the supplemental set that's coming out in 5 months' time, or 4 months' time, or when I think it comes out in October or November, right? That's the main reason. Anyway, that's a bit of speculation. Obviously, thank you for joining me just for a bit of rampant speculation. I know you're excited to see the name of the next Flesh and Blood set. I wish I had more information, but obviously that is part of the joy of spoiler season, is figuring this stuff out when and if it becomes relevant. But I just thought it was such an interesting tidbit. I had to talk about it straight away. I have great content coming out for you. I'm recording it this weekend. I will be putting out a little bit of a pre-release primer at some point this evening. Unfortunately, as you may have heard, all of the pre-releases, the 3 I had scheduled, as well as the participation booster pack draft day that I had planned for myself on Sunday, have in fact been cancelled. We were going to gather up all the participation boosters from the first 2 pre-releases and the third one and just draft like 3 drafts on Sunday. But it's all been cancelled because the product hasn't arrived in the UK, which I'm really upset about. But I will still be drawing on my world premiere experience to do a little bit of a quick pre-release primer video before I log off this evening. So it should be there for everyone tomorrow before you go to your pre-releases to get yourself a bit of a good head start on what's going on. And yeah, and then I'm recording some other stuff. I've just started work. I'm re-recording my new Player Hero Guide series to make it a bit flashier. You guys may not know this, but one of the most popular videos on my channel, it gets like 600-700 views a month, is my new player overview video, where I basically spend 2 minutes on every single hero in the game. It gets loads of traction, so we're redoing that to make it nicer. And that's it, really. The only other thing to remind you guys is that the Patreon giveaway of the Heralds of Rebirth is happening for everyone who's subscribed on Patreon at the end of this month. So by the end of June, depending on the tier you're subscribed at, you're going to get 1, 2, 3 Heralds of Rebirth. If I don't, and I currently don't have, the level of Patreon so that all of the promos are gone, if I don't hit that level, then I will be more generous with the people who have signed up, just because, thank you for supporting me. Obviously, if I hit the level, I can't give out one to everyone, then I have to raffle them away a bit. But if you are looking for Herald of Rebirth promos, then, pretty cheap to subscribe to Patreon to get a playset of 1, 2, or 3 of them, depending on... Not a playset, sorry, to get a copy of 1, 2, or 3 of them, depending on which tier you sign up to. So yeah, anyway, that's what I'm going to leave you on. Thanks for joining me on the stream. I thought it was pretty fun. I just wanted to talk about that news straight away because I got so excited. Also, the shaving thing, it is very, very hot in the UK at the moment, so, you can forgive me the lack of beard for at least, like a week, maybe, because it's 35 degrees today, and it was just so much. Anyway, I'll talk to you all soon. Have a great day, and a great weekend if you're going to pre-releases and you don't watch my pre-release preview video.